Hi lovelies, welcome back to my channel. Oh my gosh, I can't start this video without saying sorry for being gone so long. I really had to take a break. It was way longer than I had expected. I just needed to figure out what I wanted to do and where I was going with my channel. Today, as you can see from the title, I wanted to talk about the death of Tupac Shakur. If you have followed my channel for a long time, since the beginning, you all know that I am a huge Tupac Shakur fan. I love him. I think he brought so much to the industry, not just musically but politically. He had a voice, he had an opinion, and he had so much to give. It is a privilege to sit here and talk about him today, and I just want to go into a few conspiracy theories about his death because, as we know, a lot of people think Tupac is still alive. Anyway, without further ado, let's get into talking about Tupac Shakur. Tupac was born on the 16th of June 1971, and his parents actually named him Lizanne Parish Crooks. When he was about 1 year old, I think it was, they renamed him Tupac Shakur. Tupac was named after, I think he was a warrior, and Shakur he took from his stepdad's surname. He was born to Afeni Shakur and Billy Garland, but he was actually raised by Mutulu Shakur and Afeni, Mutulu being his stepdad. I do want to just run through his history and his life because I think it's really interesting. He was brought up in the Black Panther movement. His stepdad was a Black Panther, his mother was a Black Panther, and they were very socially and politically involved in the party. And so, as you can imagine, Tupac grew up seeing a lot of opinions and a lot of views and a lot of passion for what people believed in, the people around him believed in. Tupac was actually born in Harlem, in East Harlem, I believe, in New York. So although he loved California and he spent like his mid-teens up until his death living in California, he was actually born in New York. Just to give you a rundown of how he actually ended up in California, Mutulu Shakur was actually a member of the Black Panther movement, and so was his godmother, Assata Shakur. And what happened was Assata was actually wanted by the FBI, and she ended up being incarcerated. And Mutulu wanted to help her and get her out. I think she spent about 7 years around the States trying to dodge the FBI, who were after her, and who I believe she is still one of the FBI's most wanted females. So she actually gained asylum in Cuba. Now, if you know the Tupac story and you know that people think he's in Cuba, she is actually factually in Cuba. The American government knows she's in Cuba, and the Cuban government actually refused to give her back to the States. They said, nope, we are not giving her back to you. So the fact that she's in Cuba, could Tupac have followed her there? Who knows? Mutulu was caught in 1986 and imprisoned for 60 years for apparently helping Assata escape from incarceration and a number of other alleged crimes that he allegedly took place in. After this, Tupac and his family actually moved to Baltimore, where we know Tupac met Jada Pinkett. At the time, she was not Jada Pinkett Smith, at the Baltimore School of the Arts. And obviously we know here that they developed a great friendship, and he spoke fondly of her. He wrote poetry about her. He said that they would be lifelong friends, and Jada has gone on to care very deeply about their relationship and be very protective over their friendship, and say that he was more like a brother than a friend, and they actually were friends up until his death. In 1988, he then moved to California, where the story really begins. So in 1989, once Tupac had moved to California, as we're beginning to gather here, he was always an expressive, creative, young, talented guy. And when he got to California, he actually joined a poetry group led by Lena Steinberg, and he was scouted by a guy called Atron Gregory. He actually took him on tour, and Tupac became a roadie and a backing dancer, and he joined the hip-hop digital underground group in 1990. He began his musical journey. In November 1993, Tupac was charged of the sexual assault of a woman in a hotel room. It was a woman that apparently he'd met in a club, he took back to the hotel room, he then fell asleep, and whilst he was asleep, unfortunately, the girl was sexually assaulted. To the day he died, he said he didn't do it. There are many other people around him that said he didn't do it. Even the girl herself said that Tupac actually never sexually assaulted her. He just didn't prevent it from happening. The night before he was actually due in court for sentencing, he was shot. He He was shot 5 times at the Quad Recording Studios. Now, if you have seen All Eyes on Me, they depict it as Biggie Smalls being upstairs having a party, and what happens is he comes downstairs, Pac opens his eyes, the first person he sees is Biggie. Now, I do want to touch on Biggie and Pac's relationship because I feel like there is so much conspiracy around their relationship alone. Tupac and Biggie were friends, and Tupac was actually like a mentor to Biggie. They actually had a really good friendship. They had a really close bond, and so it's actually really sad what happened to them and the East Coast West Coast rivalry, because they were two actually really talented young men who were good friends up until this point. Tupac was shot the day before his court appearance, and he believed it was Biggie. Whilst he went to court and he was sentenced to jail where he spent 9 months, there was lots of like rumours and whispering about it being Biggie Smalls who shot him. Whilst Pac was in prison, Biggie released a song called Who Shot Ya? So it was a lot of like attention on it. It like got heated very quickly. A lot of other people got involved. It was just really, really heated. Tupac served 9 months in jail, where he actually became the first artist ever to have a multi-platinum selling album in jail, and actually to have a #1 on the Billboard 200. He was the first, I think he might be the only ever, I don't know, but I know he was the first artist to ever have a #1 on the Billboard whilst in jail. Tupac apparently had a really tough time in jail. The police were really brutal on him. Like, he had a really rough ride in there, and apparently a lot of people say that the Tupac that came out of jail was not the Tupac that they knew prior to jail. After Tupac was imprisoned, Suge Knight actually came to the jail and said, hey, I'm gonna bail you out. Contract that Tupac had to sign, and it was only if he signed that contract to Death Row Records that Suge Knight was gonna bail him out. Tupac signed the contract and Suge Knight bailed him out, and that was Tupac's beginning with Death Row Records. Out of jail, people said he went straight to the studio and he started writing. And apparently Tupac, when he was in the studio and he was writing, he would write and he would write and he would write, and there was no stopping him. He would be like, done, done, done. Like, he would write songs like boom, boom, boom. Like, there was no stopping him. He apparently had a work ethic like lightning. Like, so much political view and opinion, but not only that, he had persuasion, because the people of that generation, the young people, related to Tupac, and they related to what he said, and so what he said had influence. And a lot of other musicians and a lot of other artists, when you start speaking about things that make the government uncomfortable, that make the police uncomfortable, that make the FBI and the Illuminati and whatever else is out there uncomfortable, people are gonna come after you. And some people say that Tupac really did know that Tupac really had a strong intuition and a strong gut feeling. That's a bit of a reason why he was working so quickly and so hard, because he wanted to get everything out. He wanted to get everything out. It was like he knew he was against the clock. It's like he knew he was against a deadline, and that he had to get everything out before it was like too late. Like, he did Las Vegas for the Mike Tyson and the Bruce Seldon fight, and basically this is the awful night, the fatal night of the shooting. He was attending with the Death Row Records and their entourage, and after the fight they had walked through the hotel lobby and they had a guy called Orlando Baby Lane Anderson. Now, Orlando Baby Lane Anderson, about a few months before the Las Vegas fight, had actually jumped, mugged, robbed a member of Death Row. Associates pointed this out to Tupac, said that's Baby Lane, that's Orlando Anderson, he's the one that mugged you know who a few months ago. Tupac was hot-headed, Tupac had just watched a boxing match, Tupac was passionate, and a fight broke out, and it broke out in the lobby, and it was recorded on videotape, and there's no two ways about that, that's what happened. Broke up with Suge Knight to Club 662, and this is unfortunately where the fatal incident takes place. So in Suge Knight's car, they're driving to Club 662, There are reports that around 11:05 the police pulled them over because there was no license plates on the car, and the music they were playing was too loud. Suge pulled the license plates out of the boot of the car and they were let go. And then at 11:15 they pull up at a red light, or a stoplight if you're American. The movie All Eyes on Me depicts it as them talking to on one side, and then on the other side a white Cadillac pulls up, pulls out a gun, fires 14 times into Suge Knight's car, and Tupac was hit 4 times. Once in the arm, once in the thigh, and twice in the chest. And one of the bullets actually punctured his right lung. Something grazed past his head, but he wasn't actually hit, and the Cadillac was gone. After this point, there are so many conflicting stories, and this is where the conspiracy theories really begin, because some people say Suge Knight then shot off and drove Puck to the hospital, and then there are other reports that say, well no, the police and the paramedics came and the paramedics took Suge and Tupac to the hospital. There are reports that Suge Knight said that Tupac was unconscious from the moment he was shot, and then there are other reports that say Tupac was conscious all the way up until the hospital and while he was in the hospital. And might I add, whilst Tupac was in the hospital, they put Tupac Shakur, the biggest probably rapper of that time, on the ground floor of the hospital. That meant that anyone could walk in, anyone could walk out. There was no security, no guards, nothing. That on the 13th of September 1996 at 4:03, Tupac Shakur was announced dead. Reports say that the death cause was respiratory failure and cardiac arrest. About the conspiracy theories, because who could have killed Tupac, and is Tupac actually even dead? The first theory was that it was a gang-related shooting, that after the fight that they had with Orlando Anderson, that the Crips or another gang has decided to find Tupac, pull up next to him in the Cadillac and shoot him. That was the first kind of, well, it would be like the most obvious thing and the most obvious scenario. You've just had a fight with someone, you're all being aggressive, the tensions are high, and he's found out where you're going, he's followed your car, and he's shot you. Now, I mean, Tupac's security guard, I think he was riding in front of them for this whole time. The security guard actually said, I think, to Tupac, please ride with me. Puck was like, nope, I'm riding with Suge. And I find it quite weird, because I think usually he would have always ridden with the security guards. So the first theory on it is that he was shot by Orlando Anderson, or a member of Orlando Anderson's gang. Now, Orlando Anderson was questioned briefly by the police. Now, I don't understand, because really, looking at the evidence and what had happened that night and what had happened like a few moments ago, surely Orlando Anderson and his crew would be the first people that you would really believe had done this. But the police just kind of fobbed it off and was like, okay, never mind, you can go. The second and one of the most common things that people believe about Tupac's death is that it was arranged, done by, sorted by B.I.G. And I just don't believe that, because I think Joyce B.I.G., I don't think he had the same kind of like aggression and hardness and roughness that Puck had. And I mean that in the nicest way. I love Puck, but he did have an aggression, and he had an anger, and he had that heatness that I don't quite think Biggie had. And I just don't think that Biggie would have done it. I mean, when Tupac was shot the first time, Biggie went to the hospital and tried to see Puck, and like his friends and his family, I think, and like the people outside, the security, were just like, no, go away. And I actually feel a bit for Biggie. Like, in the beginning, when I didn't really know the story and all I knew was that it was East Coast versus West Coast, it was Biggie versus Tupac, I obviously took Tupac's side because I love him and I love his music and I love his work and I love his legacy. But the more I looked into it and the more I delved into it and the more I learned about their friendship, I really felt for Biggie Smalls, because I really feel like he didn't have anything to do with this, and I actually really feel like he really loved Puck as well, and that he respected Puck, and that he just cared about him. I really do feel that, and I feel like what happened was someone was in Biggie's ear and someone was in Puck's ear. And so, like I said, Biggie was accused, not by the police, by the media, by fans, by people in the industry. Like, people really believed that he had something to do with it, and I don't know, I just don't think that he did. The next theory was that Suge Knight had something to do with this. Now, Suge Knight is a dodgy AF character, okay? There are so many things that happened at Death Row Records, so many like brutalities and violences and aggression. Like, if you didn't do what Suge wanted you to do, you're in trouble. The thing is that Tupac wanted to leave Death Row Records. He wanted to set up his own record label, and he brought this idea to Suge, and Suge was like, nah, homie, not on my watch, you belong to me. So what happened was, Tupac went to him and said, look, I want to set up my own record label, I want to leave Death Row Records, I can do this, I really, really want to do this by myself. And Suge Knight pulls out a book and says, well, go ahead, but you'll owe me a total sum of dollars. And it was a lot of money, which Tupac didn't have to pay. And Tupac was like, well, what the heck do I do now? So what Suge did is he let him set up a sub-label under the Death Row Records label. That way he still kind of owned him, he could still keep him as a minion, and Tupac, there's nothing Tupac could do about it. Tupac was in debt to Suge Knight from the bail jail, from the music videos, the studio time, everything. That was another theory, that Suge Knight was like, well, he's gonna try and leave, he's gonna try and like outsell Death Row Records, he's gonna try and overthrow me, I'm not having it, and I'm gonna get rid of him. And so basically people do think that Suge Knight has something to do with it. Even to this day, Suge Knight is so dodgy about Tupac's death. He was the only person there with him in that car. He's the only other person that saw what happened, and as he wasn't shot, okay, fair enough, if gunshots are firing at you, I can only imagine, like, you're like, what the hell, like everything's probably like a blur and life's probably flashing before your eyes and there's a gun smoke and whatever else, but he would have seen something. He would have seen something. Like, there's something so dodgy about Suge Knight. I mean, if you actually look into Suge Knight and who he is and the violences that he's been involved in, even after Tupac's death, like, he is just a dodgy dude. So possibly, could Suge Knight have had something to do with Tupac's death? Possibly, but I would not rule that out in the slightest. And the last and most common conspiracy theory that you will hear people talk about and question and debate, it's one of my favourite debates actually, is that Tupac is still alive. Tupac is still alive and living in Cuba. When I first heard this, I was like, what? There are so many reasons and clues as to why Tupac could be living in Cuba. It's in a lot of music, there's a lot of photo evidence, there's a lot of video evidence. After Tupac's death, he didn't have like a big massive funeral. There's nothing you can really find on Tupac's funeral. He was cremated the day after. Suge Knight paid somebody to cremate Tupac like 24 hours after his death, and no one knows what happened to the guy who cremated him. He vanished. Basically, I mean, there's so many reasons why he could be in Cuba. There's pictures of Madonna. Now, Tupac and Madonna dated for a brief amount of time, but they were really good friends. And there are pictures of Madonna in Cuba riding in like one of the old Cuban cars, and in the back there is a guy who looks exactly like Tupac. There are news reports that have taken place in Cuba, and a guy's walked past the back screen and he looks just like Tupac. There are so many sightings in Cuba. Cuba is like an off-the-grid country. Like, it's where a lot of Americans go to run from the FBI, like Assata Shakur. So Tupac's godmother is a refuge in Cuba. It is very possible that she could have said, hey, you look like you need an exit, I've got a place here, the government's protecting me here, come and live with me. Also, another thing is, if you ever hear any celebrities, I'm talking Snoop Dogg, I'm talking The Outlaws, I'm talking Afeni Shakur, Tupac's mother, like, if you ever hear them talk about Tupac and his death, which they never ever say, and people have outright asked them, do you think Tupac is still alive? Is Tupac still alive? They will never ever say no. Afeni Shakur's exact words were, my son chose to leave quietly. Leave quietly. That to me just sounds like someone that has left. has left, he's chosen to leave. There's even a guy called Casanova the Don that people do believe is Tupac, and who is making music with no like face to his name. And I'm not being funny, I've heard one of the songs, it sounds just like Tupac, and in one of the songs he talks about the death and the shooting and what had happened, and I'm telling you, it's haunting. Like, if you can find it and listen, I'll actually link it below. Please listen to it, because it sounds like Tupac. And I know that in this day and age there are so many like, I don't know, systems and programs around that can make you sound like other people, and that obviously people are imitators of other people, and you know, it's easy to be done, but it just, there's something in me that does believe that this guy could be Tupac. So I'm going to read out some of the lyrics from one of the Casanova the Don songs, and I just think it's a bit weird. So it goes, I heard gunshots, but it got weird. Instead of bullets, only smoke appeared. Next thing I knew, two men in a suit were just standing there. He goes on to say, scars on my back, looking at the white Cadillac. Before a black bag over my head, I couldn't believe what had happened to see. I couldn't believe what I had happened to see. A beep who looked just like me. Sitting there next to Suge, another 4 shots, that can't be good. I gotta find a way, that's what I said. Next thing I know, a blow to the head. What the heck? This is what people believe. This is actually what people believe, because there's so many conflicting stories around that crime scene. So many conflicting stories. People have said that Suge drove Tupac to the hospital. Other people have said that the police and the paramedics came, and there was helicopters that came and took Tupac to the hospital. This is a A-list celebrity hip-hop star. And may I mention that no one has been convicted for Tupac's death. In Vegas, one of the busiest places in the world, nobody saw anything. Tupac is riding in that car with Suge Knight for Death Row Records, one of the biggest record labels on the planet at that time, and nobody saw anything. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? I think that Tupac had a body double that actually body doubled for him in like films, because obviously he did a lot of movies, that he was taken out of the car, he was replaced with this body double, the body double was killed, and then he shot off, and Tupac was taken, I don't know, to Cuba, I don't know. And the thing is that even when Tupac's at the hospital, there are so many conflicting stories of people that went to visit him. Conflicting stories from Snoop Dogg, conflicting stories from Suge Knight, conflicting stories from Tupac's family. People were saying he was conscious, people were saying he was unconscious. It's like, what was it? What one was it? What? Don't know, because from the moment that Cadillac pulls up beside them and the gunshots are fired, nothing is concrete from that point. And it's because if Tupac isn't living in Cuba and he actually was shot, like, and his killer hasn't been convicted and is possibly still out there, then it's just such an injustice to someone who gave so much to this world, and who still does, and whose legacy lives so like strongly in my generation and in generations below me and in generations in front of me. Like, it's just such an injustice, and it makes me so mad. So that I have a few that 90% of me thinks that he is in Cuba and he is living just a quiet life and he's still making music, and I mean, I would love that. And then there's like that 10% of me that does think he was murdered by Suge, and I just don't know. I just don't know, because so many different theories, and so he is in Cuba living it up, having the time of his life. Great to think of him still there writing music, still watching us and the world from afar, and just getting on with his life peacefully. So I really do hope that he's in Cuba. I've loved making this video. Tupac is one of my favourite people to talk about. I'm very passionate about it because he made such an impact on my life and still does through music. I'd love to hear what you guys think happened down in the comments below. I know it's like such a big thing to ask because, like I said, there's a million and one theories, but I really would love to hear it down in the comments below so we can get talking down there. And if you like this video, please hit the thumbs up. If you want to see more videos just like this, then please do subscribe, and I will see you next week for another video. Bye!